The road ahead, graduate school prep. Learning outcomes of this module include investigating various factors associated with graduate school selection, discover the process of applying and maintaining success in graduate school, and how to successfully build a positive network that will help you thrive socially, academically, and professionally. Now, before we start this, I think this is one of the more exciting modules for me because when I first started on my journey to graduate school, I didn't know a lot. So doing a module for student leaders who wish to go off to graduate school, for me is such a pleasure. Now, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about why grad school. So why go to graduate school? Well, for a lot of people, it comes down to one thing, and that's money. People want to believe that going to graduate school will earn them more money. And in many instances, that is especially true. We've heard the notion that having a bachelor's degree is a new high school diploma. Well, the master's degree really ensures that you get a level of specialization. And of course, although many people have a master's degree these days, it still puts you in a much more favorable position than someone that does not have one. It increases your earning potential, of course. Some people do it because they want to go into become a professor or a researcher or both. This is a great way to do it. You cannot teach on the higher education level without a master's degree. Institutions that hire faculty members or adjunct faculty members, they usually require that you have at least 18 hours in a specific discipline before they allow you to teach at any level, whether that be at a 4-year institution or at a community college. Some people do it for promotion. So some people are already in a situation where they're full-time professionals. They just need to go back to school to get a master's degree in order to, or a PhD in order to retain their current employment or to be promoted to the next level. And some people do it for the love of learning. While I don't know too many people that do this, there are some people out there who do it simply for the love of learning. Now, this quote that says delayed gratification alone will not be enough. And what I mean by that is oftentimes in graduate school, you're delaying the ability maybe to make money immediately or even some level of enjoyment. And so a lot of times when you're going through the program, delayed gratification is not enough because you're dealing with so many issues and sometimes you need the money right away. So don't think that for any reason putting off something for 3-4 years that is a full-time job is going to somehow be satisfying at times. Sometimes it just will not be enough. Let's talk a little bit about preliminary considerations. Now, before deciding to enroll in a graduate program, here are some things that you might want to know. You might want to know what your career goals are. For some people, going back to school is not something they have to do. This will be going the extra mile. You have to know yourself. You have to know if you're mature enough to handle the rigors of graduate school. For me, this was something that I was pretty sure about, but once I got into grad school, I did question it, especially my first semester, because I thought it would be somewhat of a breeze like undergrad, and that didn't prove to be the case. Timeline. You have to know when you want to have this degree completed. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Or is it 7 or 8 years? There are some people who get this thing called ABD, which stands for all but dissertation, and they never go back and finish. So being cognizant of your timeline is going to be very important before you embark on this journey because it is time consuming and it will affect some of your relationships, no doubt. Affiliated cost. The visits to these campuses will cost money. Having housing, if you're not working in Res Life, let's say as an assistant resident director, you will probably have to pay for housing. And you may get that through a stipend. You may get that through an assistantship. But for the most part, you are responsible for housing because you have to have somewhere to sleep at the end of the night. Holiday travel. So depending upon where you deem home, you have to consider, just like you did in undergrad, how much of a distance is it. If you are from Massachusetts, but the school that you're going to is in California, you have to put that in the equation to see if it's feasible for you to go uh, home to visit your family during holiday breaks or even small breaks. Again, geographic considerations. This is what I'm talking about with affiliated cost. Knowing how far your school is from your hometown. Admissions criteria for programs of interest. So what do they require? Some graduate programs do not even require you to take the GRE or the GMAT. They just want you to have great grades and strong experience. It just depends. Not every school is equal. So make sure you know what the admissions criteria is for each school that you're applying for. Now, the graduate degree path can be deemed in various ways. If you decide to do it now, which if you're fresh out of undergrad, I would definitely recommend you do it right away simply because you don't have any real expenses. Now, this is assuming that you're young and single, you don't have a family to support or anything like that. But I definitely recommend that you go ahead and get out the way because one, you're used to school and just sort of the rigor of school, but also if you decide to put it off later, you may never go back to school because you will have other obligations. As people in grad school know, who have been to grad school, they know is once you start making some money, it is very difficult to then quit your job in order to be a quote poor college student again. And of course, if you wait too long, you may never go to school because again, you're making a really good amount of money and that's very difficult to give up when you are established. Some people go to graduate schools online. That's another option. We're not going to spend time talking about that, but that is another great option for some people. Public or private. This is important because it just depends on the resources that the school may have. Now, a lot of people think private schools have more money than public schools in graduate degree programs, and I'm not so sure about that. I haven't been able to validate that, but one thing is true. You have to consider what type of education you're getting. Do you want to go full or part time? This is another important decision that you have to make because obviously, if you go part time, it's going to take you a lot longer. If you decide to go full time, it's going to demand more of your time, and you have to consider what obligations you currently have and what type of relationships you're involved in. This is just a side note. I've known some people to have bad blood in relationships, or they even break up as a result of someone going to graduate school. So by all means, just be careful with the decision that you're making. And I'm not trying to sound like graduate school is a bad thing, but these are all considerations. Do you want a terminal MS degree program? And, in other words, will it just stop after 2 or 3 years and you don't have an intention to go off to get your doctorate degree? Do you want a master's degree followed by a PhD or even law school? That's another thing to consider. Some schools have a combination where based on your first 2 years, you will get automatic admission into a PhD program without you having to do too much. Or do you go directly into a PhD program after undergraduate? Now, this is a big commitment because you're essentially giving up the next 7 years of your life, and you know it, without there being any thought of anything else. And it takes a lot of commitment. I mean, this is something that I never considered, but for some people, that's what they want to do. And then assistantships. Does this degree program provide assistantships? Okay, academic considerations. When picking the school, consider these things. test scores, program emphasis, um, teaching, research, or industry. Now let's back up for a second and talk about test scores. Test scores are, of course, important, but the one thing to consider, some schools ask for higher test scores than others. Program emphasis is really, really important simply because, um, depending upon what you're going to graduate school for, it will look good in your particular industry because, excuse me, let's say, for example, in my profession, higher education, we know some of the top programs, or at the time that I was in grad school, some of the top programs were at UCLA, USC, and it really depended upon who the faculty member was at that particular place and who you studied under. That's something that they don't really talk a lot about. So your program emphasis is going to be really important. Sometimes it's not even about the name of the school. It's mostly about what that school is noted for. So keep that in mind. Teaching, research, or industry. Are you planning to, again, do you want to be a educator? Do you want to be a researcher? Or are you doing this to boost your credentials in your particular industry? Apprenticeship research model. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes you can go to a school that has a well-renowned faculty member there that you want to more or less study under. And this holds a lot of weight because when you study under this person, they have certain connections that they can link you to because they're well noted in their industry. And if you study under this person, it will definitely open up some doors for you that, while you may have some other colleagues at other schools that may be struggling to find work, they may be able to automatically hook you up with something right away. Strong discipline areas. This kind of goes into the certain classes that you'll be taking. What type of courses will you take? Will it test you? Will these courses help you when you begin to go into the practice of whatever it is that you're doing in your industry? Faculty changes is going to be really important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but will the faculty member that you're there to work with, will they still be there by the time you finish? And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the advisor section, but this is very, very critical. Of course, graduation rate. I think this is critical, but I think this is especially critical of students who are deemed minorities, because you don't want to go to a school whereby your minorities are not finishing. And this could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because of the climate of the campus. In other words, the way you're received, the way you're perceived or even treated on that campus. That's something to definitely consider, because I know for the type of school that I went to University of Massachusetts Amherst, there weren't a lot of minorities in my program. And in fact, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 of us all together. So if you're looking for a certain kinship from people, you have to consider that too, because you're going to be there. That's what you're going to call home, anywhere from 2 to 7 years. And you need to be in a place where you can be really, really comfortable. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Admission considerations. Now, before you apply, you want to review the application schedule. You want to make sure that your application is gets there in time. And sometimes, believe it or not, they can overlook your application. Applications get lost. So do not wait until the last minute to turn your application in. You want to turn your application in well in advance. If you're planning on getting some type of fellowship, understand that usually in mid-fall, say October, that's when the fellowships are usually due at the institution, and maybe even sooner. Grad school applications are usually, they're starting to take them in around January 1. So you need to have them in by January 1. I would say March is definitely too late. But again, every program is going to have a different requirement. Now, 6 weeks for recommendations. I would recommend that anyone, when they ask for recommendations, make sure you give at least 6 weeks to get your recommendation. The only reason why I say this is because the people that you're asking for recommendations are busy, and you don't want them to rush through the recommendation. You want them to give you a great, solid recommendation, but you also want to give enough time for them not only to write it for you, but in the event that they forget about it, you still have time to make up to, check with them and say, hey, did you finish my recommendation? February and last moment. Again, you do not want to be turning your application in the last week of February. You want to have your application to grad school usually sometime in early January. And here's one last thing. Don't feel pressured to commit. There's a train. Don't feel pressured to commit because, well, I have a story. When I was in grad school, I had committed to a school because they offered me. UMass was my first choice. However, this particular institution that I applied to was accepted by. Prior to visiting UMass, they gave me a great offer immediately. And I felt a bit pressured because I hadn't heard from UMass, but this school gave me this great offer. And I went ahead and took it, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm going to wait a little bit longer. Now, every school has deadlines, so they will tell you, listen, we need for you to make a decision by this particular time. We can't give you 3 weeks. We can't give you 2 weeks. And let me tell you this, unless it's a school that you really, really want to go to, do not believe the hype. If they really want you, they're going to save that spot for you, but they're not going to wait too long. So don't expect them to wait 6 months for you to make your decision. But they will give you a bit of an extension because they should understand that they're not the only school that you're courting at that particular time. So don't just automatically pick a school because they're putting pressure on you. Because this is a very big decision for you. And this could determine employment opportunities in the future. It could also include other opportunities for doors opening up. So let me tell you, I'm very satisfied with going to UMass because I believe it definitely helped my career. And also, I would even go as far as say, from the time I went to UMass, that choice helped me for the next 10 years of my life. So it's very, very critical. I cannot say enough about that. Let's talk about standardized tests. Now, which tests are required? That's something that the application should tell you. We know that there's a GRE and the MAT, and then there's a lot of other different type of tests out there that you can take. But make sure you check with the school and make sure that you double check with your application before you take any type of test. And I would not recommend that you take both. You can if you want to. I mean, most time when you're taking an MAT, you're doing it so that you can get into some type of MBA program. But you definitely want to consider it before you spend any time taking these tests. What if tests are recommended? Well, if they're recommended, that basically means you need to take it. Unless you get some type of cue from the people who own the admission application, who will tell you, hey, listen, this is not something we go over. Or if you have some great work experience going in your favor, I think that's the only time that it can be justified, whereby you don't have to, take that test. But when they say it's recommended, they basically mean you need to take it. Register in time for score submission. This is common sense. General and subject exams. Now, some tests like the GRE will have just a general test, but then sometimes it will go into specific subjects. Just depends on your major. If you're getting some type of major in engineering or biology, you're probably going to have to do a subject test because not everyone can just go in there and be in those advanced courses. Time for preparation, you got to think about that. Now, if you're someone who is planning to take the test, I would recommend you maybe start prepping that test maybe your junior year, the beginning of your junior year, because this is going to give you plenty of time to maybe take some courses to help you prepare for it. And by the way, when we start talking about taking courses to help you prepare, I think they're absolutely worth it, especially if they can boost your score by a few points to get you above it. And just remember this: taking these tests is not a measure of your intelligence. It's all about the measure of how well you are able to take a test. That's really what it's about. And retaking, give yourself plenty of time to retake the test in the event that you have to. I would say definitely about 6 months or so. Let's talk a little bit about transcript. Official transcripts are required. They do not, you cannot go online and print them out yourself. And what official transcripts basically means, they need a seal, and usually they want them to be either be sealed in an envelope. So when you submit it, everything together, you can do that way, or they want it to be sent directly from the school. So you will not be sending it yourself. They will be getting it directly from the school. You need transcripts from every school that you've ever taken one or more classes. Now, this doesn't include if you've taken just one class at a community college over the summer. But that does include, again, I'll say 2 or more, definitely. It says 1 or more, but I would say probably 2 or more. Highlight major, upper division, grade point average, elsewhere on application. So in other words, if you're planning on if you got to use your transcripts, which you have to, I would definitely suggest that you highlight what your upper division GPA was. So whatever your major was, those are the classes that you need to specify. So if you're engineering major, they're not as much concerned about your general education courses. They're more concerned with the classes that you took for your major. Recommendation letters. Do not wait until the last minute. Do not wait until the last minute to get a recommendation letter from the person. I'm not going to read everything, but what I really want to point out here is that your academic references definitely carry the most weight. So the man down the street had known you since you were 4 years old, that's not going to cut it. They want to know what type of student you are. So naturally, academic references carry the most weight. Preference of omissions to waive your rights to review. Now, you can legally make either choice, but the preference is that you waive your rights to review. So they don't want to know that you saw the letter and then you advised them to say this about you in the letter. When you're approaching someone to write a letter, you might want to just ask them what you can provide for them. Resume, list of programs. Some people may not know you that well. They may not be familiar with your entire body of work that you were able to do. They may be a professor that maybe you've only taken 2 or 3 classes from, so they're not entirely sure of what else have you done at the college level. And let me also say this: be very careful about who you select to write a recommendation, because if it's someone that they don't really know you, they're not going to give you a great recommendation. They may give you a recommendation that is full of fluff or very general. So just be very careful who you use for your recommendation letter, because you definitely want to have someone who knows not just about who you are as a student, but also who you are as a student. I mean, this is really, really important. And of course, thank you notes. When you have someone write a letter of recommendation, by all means, please give them a thank you note, because you may need them for something else down the road. And you do not want to appear as if you are unappreciative of what they did, because again, they're taking time on their busy schedule to write a letter on your behalf. So just keep that in mind. Then the statement of purpose. Oftentimes, schools will ask you to write a statement of purpose. This is for you to tell a little bit more about who you are. This is for them to, I guess, peer in your soul, to figure out what your journey was, who you are. So you want to tell your story. You want to be very authentic with what you've done. I think the better written the story, the better your chances of getting in that particular school. So you definitely want to have it where you're able to tell them more about yourself other than what they can indicate on your resume or what is indicated in some of your letters of recommendation. You want to definitely tell them. And I would say highlight some of your struggles. Highlight those things because you're going to, in your narrative, you're going to tell everybody all about how great you are, but they want to know a real story. And they do read these things. I was part of a graduate school admissions committee once, and we had to read everything. So the people that I was able to easily recommend were people who really had good stories. You want to answer any specific questions specifically, and what I mean by that is on this statement of purpose, they may ask you for certain things. You want to make sure that those go answered, and of course, all these things, which are kind of common sense. Make sure you have accurate grammar, punctuation. You want to connect your interests and goals to program specific. So in other words, why in the world are you interested in this program? And if there's a disconnect in your interest and goals, the committee is going to say, well, we're not really sure about this first. We don't understand how this fits into your ultimate goals. Research faculty interest, and you want to discuss that. You really want to get into, if there's a particular research topic that you want to do, you want to talk about that. But like I said, put it with a narrative, put it with a story. It's not just enough to say, I want to work with robotics. Why do you want to work with? What sparked your interest for wanting to work with robotics? You, again, articulate career goals clearly and utilize the writing center at your institution. This will be your best friend. And go there as many times as possible when you are putting this together. Do not be afraid to utilize this service. Also, another service you might want to consider is Fiverr.com. This is a great website because people do things for $5. So you may want to hire someone who is unbiased, someone who is not, don't even know you, who can just go through it and do some correcting on your behalf. But also, what's great about this website is you have some people up here who are really good writers. So I would recommend if your narrative needs a bit of, I don't know, some intrigue or just it's boring, I would say maybe think about hiring someone from Fiverr. It may cost you more than $5, but hire someone from Fiverr that can help jazz up your story a bit. It doesn't have to be lies and fabrications, but I would definitely recommend making your story sound a lot interesting because that's what's going to put you over more than anything else. Writing samples. This is very important. They don't want narratives, of course. If possible, revise with the professor. And when we're talking about, I'm talking about revisions. This should say revisions with the professor. You want to relate to the field of study. And I think the best type of writing examples would be research papers or some type of term papers. But if it can be connected to the related field of study, that would be awesome. And maybe even a thesis chapter. So if you are in a master's program and you're planning on going to a PhD program, a thesis chapter would be the best thing to consider. Now, there are some undergrad programs out there that do require students to do a thesis. So that would be a winner in terms of a writing sample. Let's talk a little bit about paying for graduate school. Now, how will you pay? First of all, is funding renewable? This is a very critical question because not every school is going to give you funding every year. Sometimes that funding is, as you see on the bottom here, project affiliation funding. And what I mean by that is some schools only give the school a certain number of years of funding. And sometimes this is dependent upon either a particular grant or project or even an advisor, which goes back to what I'm saying. If your advisor or a faculty member is at the school at the time that you get there. They may not necessarily be there by the time you're ready to graduate. So keep that in mind. And then another question is, what's covered? Are they just paying for your tuition? Are they giving you a tuition remission? Are they paying for a meal plan maybe? Are they paying for your books? Are they giving you housing? What's included in your graduate school? Now, I am a fan of Residence Life. That was my meal ticket. That's how I got my graduate school paid for. So I would say to anyone, depending upon what school you go to, do not overlook Residence Life opportunities, because with Residence Life opportunities, yes, it will consume some of your time, but at least you'll have a place to stay. You will have maybe a meal plan, and you'll also get your tuition paid for. Now you'll pay, a price, but like I said before, this is something you might want to consider. Now, other considerations. So what about the summer? So the program may only be for the fall and the spring. So you need to consider what type of employment are you going to have to gain in order to support yourself over the summer. Do they require you to do some type of assistantship over the summer? These are things you're going to have to ask. Are there research opportunities at your school? Can you work with a particular professor on a research project that summer? Or are you going to be allowed to maybe teach some classes over the summer? I mean, these are all questions that you want to consider. Internships. Will your institution provide you with an internship, or will they help you get an internship? Networking with future employers. This is a good time to begin networking with future employers in the summer if you can get yourself an internship or some type of job. And, just like I was saying, work may lead to research topics. And what I mean by that is the type of work that you do that summer may give you a spark for the type of research topics you may want to do for your thesis or even for your dissertation. You want to utilize your advisor's network. I'll never forget when I was in graduate school, my professor and I went to Kansas City, Missouri for a conference that fall, my first year there, that fall. And we ended up meeting one of his colleagues and friends from the University of Hawaii, Manoa. And of course, my first thought was, well, you're requiring us to do a practicum over the summer. Why not do it in Hawaii? Well, I did not get a practicum at University of Hawaii, Manoa. He did, however, know someone that worked at University of Hawaii, Hilo. And as a result of that, I got that practicum, and I spent 6 weeks that summer in the gorgeous Big Island of Hawaii. So it was awesome. It was a great experience. I'll never forget it. But that's the type of networking I'm talking about. I went to this conference with him on his recommendation, and I went, and I was sort of the only grad student from my school that went. So I had an opportunity to meet a lot of people. And on top of that, I met a lot of people that we were reading about in our school. So people that were writing articles and papers that we were reading in our program, I had a chance to meet a lot of these people in person. So it was just awesome. Other thing you want to consider is distance factor. Just like I was saying with my Hawaii trip, that was a plane ticket, and I had some other expenses. Fortunately for me, I did have some money saved up, so I was able to take care of that. But that's something you want to definitely consider, because maybe what if I didn't have money saved up and I was flat broke like most grad school students are? Maybe I don't go to Hawaii. So you definitely don't want to miss on those type of opportunities. Now let's talk a little bit about Graduate School 101, what's expected. Now, it's mostly discussion and intelligent debate. Now, I have intelligent in parentheses because you can't just piggyback off of everyone, and you can't repeat what someone else just said. It's really based on debate. So they're looking for you to bring something to the conversation. That's what grad school is really mostly about, more so than grad school. I'm sorry, in undergrad. In undergrad, you're sitting there listening to the professor the whole time. And while you will have times where you will listen to the professor in graduate school, it's mostly discussion and critical thinking. You're going to have group projects. You're going to always have those. You're going to be partnering with other people in order to get group projects done. So it is in your best interest to be friendly and to even befriend some people in your graduate program. Now, you don't have to be everyone's friend, but you want to be someone that people are willing to work with, because if you're not, you're going to have a very tough way to go. Don't read everything or you'll go crazy. Now, what I mean by that is you're being mandated to read anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pages a week. Sometimes you have a book or two to read in an entire week. They give you a week to read one book, and then on top of that, they give you other assignments to read. And what I'm saying to you is, do not read everything. Pick some talking points and be an expert in your reading. So that way you can go back to the discussion and sound intelligent and sophisticated. Which, by the way, you will be judged based on your participation in many of the courses. So they want to know what's on your mind. They want to know what you have to contribute. Never be late to class and never miss class. That goes without saying, but missing one class in graduate school can definitely be detrimental to the final outcome of your grade. So try not to miss any classes. And by the way, let me say this is a caveat. Some graduate programs will actually tell you if they don't feel like you're giving 100% after a certain period of time, maybe after your first year, maybe after your second year, they evaluate you. And if they don't feel like you're doing what you need to do and you're not up to par, they will, in fact, ask you to leave. So please keep that in mind, that you just can't skate by in graduate school. They do expect you to contribute. Now, also consider teaching professors as potential advisors. Now, sometimes you're not automatically assigned an advisor, and when we talk about advisors, we're really talking about people that can help you potentially finish your dissertation.